I never thought I'd end up here, not like this. I was a guy who believed in honesty, in loyalty, things you'd think mattered in a relationship. But life has a way of smashing those beliefs into tiny pieces, especially when you get hit with something so raw, so unforgivable, that it leaves you questioning everything you thought you knew. It started a few days ago, right before our engagement party. Yeah, I know, perfect timing, right? That was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, a celebration of what we had built, what we planned to build. Instead, I got blindsided by a betrayal I never saw coming. Her name, Emily. She's beautiful, smart, charming, the kind of woman who can light up a room with her smile. We'd been together for 3 years and I thought we knew everything about each other. We had plans, house, kids, a future. I'd never doubted her loyalty before, never suspected she'd do something like this. But that was before I saw it. It was late and I was exhausted. I just finished at the office and I was looking forward to crashing early. I'd booked us a nice room at that boutique hotel. Downtown, something special for the night before the party. When I pushed open the door to our room, I didn't expect to find her. Not with another man. The door was slightly ajar and I heard voices, soft, intimate, almost whispering. My stomach felt like it dropped into my shoes. I pushed the door open just enough to see through the crack and my heart nearly stopped. There she was with Jake, her coworker, in bed. His shirt was unbuttoned, her hair a mess, and they were tangled together, lips locked like they were trying to swallow each other whole. The worst part, I saw her hand slipping under his shirt, fingers trailing down his chest. I saw the way she kissed him, hungry, desperate even. My mind went blank for a second, then exploded with rage. How could she do this? How could she betray everything we'd built, right there, while I was waiting outside, clueless? I didn't make a sound. I just backed out quietly, my mind racing. I grabbed my phone, but I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of knowing I'd caught her. Instead, I took pictures, clear, undeniable proof. Her hair in disarray, her lips on his neck. Their bodies pressed together like they had no shame. I sat in the car outside, staring at those images on my screen. I could feel the heat crawling up my neck, the tightness in my chest. How could she lie to me for so long? All those late nights, all those little excuses she made, was it all bullshit? Had she been hiding this from me? From everyone. I kept telling myself I needed to stay calm, but everything inside was boiling. I felt betrayed, humiliated, furious. And I knew this wasn't just some fling, it was a full-blown affair. The fact that she was cheating on me with someone I'd trusted, Jake was her coworker, someone I'd met a few times, a guy I thought was a decent enough guy. Turns out he wasn't decent enough to stay out of her bed. When I finally went back into our room, she was still there, lying on the bed like nothing had happened. I wanted to scream, to shake her, but I held back. I just looked at her and said, "Who the hell is Jake?" Her face went pale for a second, then she blinked slowly, trying to pretend she was caught off guard. "Did you see?" she asked softly, almost like she was trying to keep her voice even. I could see right through her. Her eyes flickered and her hand trembled slightly. Yeah, I saw, and I knew the game was over. I left the room that night with my stomach churning, my mind spinning. I didn't pack much, just my wallet and my phone. I didn't want to look at her anymore, didn't want to hear her excuses. The sharp sting of betrayal was too fresh, too raw. I knew then that my life was about to change in ways I couldn't imagine. I had the evidence. I had the truth. The question was, what now? What's the point of confrontation, of yelling or crying? I knew I had to plan the next steps carefully, the revenge, the fallout. I didn't want her to get away with this, not without paying some price. But I also knew I couldn't just walk away. Not after what I saw. That night I lay awake in my car, staring at the photos on my phone, feeling like I'd just lost everything I'd worked for. And deep down, I realized I was just going to let her get away with it. Not without a fight, not without making her regret it. Do you want me to go on? The aftermath of that night has stuck with me like a bad scar. I can still feel the cold grip of disbelief tightening around my chest every time I think about her, lying there, pretending she hadn't just shattered everything. I kept staring at those pictures, trying to process what I'd seen, trying to figure out exactly how I was going to handle this mess. The first thing I did was call a close friend, a guy I trust with my life. I told him everything just to hear another voice, someone who could tell me I wasn't crazy. His reaction was straightforward. "Dude, that's messed up. You need to get out of there." I knew he was right, but part of me hesitated. I was still trying to hold on to some shred of hope that maybe, just maybe, it was a mistake or it could be fixed. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't some mistake. It was her reality. She had been lying to me for months, maybe longer. All those late nights, the secret calls, the strange perfume on her clothes. God, I'd missed all the signs, blinded by love or maybe just too damn naive. I had to think. I knew I couldn't confront her right then, not with raw anger clouding my judgment. I needed a plan, something cold, precise, and effective. Revenge wasn't just about getting back at her. It was about making her understand what she threw away. I wanted her to feel the loss, the betrayal she handed me like a gift. That day I started gathering evidence. Not just the pictures, though those were enough to ruin her if I wanted, but her messages, emails, anything I could find that proved she'd been lying about her whereabouts, her fidelity. I wanted her to see that I wasn't just reacting emotionally. I was planning something much bigger. While she was out pretending everything was fine, I was digging through her phone, her social media accounts, even her work emails. I found plenty of signs, flirty messages, late-night texts with Jake that she had kept hidden. She'd been lying about everything. She told me she was working late, seeing her family, going out with friends. Turns out she was seeing Jake sneaking around behind my back like I was just some fool to be played. I kept thinking about the moment I saw her with Jake. The way her lips parted when they kissed, the way her fingers had slipped under his shirt, those images played on a loop in my mind. I felt the blood rush to my head, my fists clenched so tight my nails nearly cut into my palms. I knew I had to act, not impulsively but deliberately. The revenge would be sweet, but it had to be calculated. I wanted her to realize that her betrayal wouldn't just be a secret hidden away. I'd make sure she paid in a way that stuck. I'd make her regret ever crossing that line. That evening, I sat down with a notepad, sketching out what I was going to do. I'd been reading up on how people get revenge, what works, what doesn't. I didn't want her to walk away unscathed, but I also didn't want to ruin myself in the process. This was about making her feel the loss, not about petty revenge for its own sake. The first step would be to make her believe I was clueless. To keep her from suspecting I'd uncovered everything. I started playing it cool, asking her about her day, acting like I hadn't seen or known anything. Meanwhile, I was waiting for the right moment to strike. I decided I'd set a trap for her. I'd leave something behind, an item she'd recognize. That would be my way of telling her I knew. Maybe I'd leave her one of her own messages, a text she forgot to delete, or perhaps I'd plant a copy of the photos in a place she'd find. Whatever I chose, it had to send the message loud and clear. I knew, and I was ready to take her down. My stomach was in knots, the adrenaline making my palms sweat. Every time I saw her smile, I'd feel that familiar sting, knowing she'd been lying right to my face. I kept telling myself I was doing this for me, for finally ending the lie. But part of me also wanted to see her squirm, to see the guilt take over her perfect mask. The night I planned to execute everything was coming up fast. I had it all mapped out, how I'd confront her with the evidence, how I'd reveal that I'd known all along. It was going to be a showdown, and when that moment came, I knew I'd find out what she was really made of. But for now, I sat in silence, clutching my phone, feeling the weight of what was to come. The betrayal had cut deep, sharper than I thought possible, and I hadn't even started to get revenge yet. That was just the beginning. Would you like me to continue? The plan was set, and I kept going over it in my mind like a damn mantra. I knew I'd have to be patient, but that wasn't easy. Every time I saw her smile, I felt that familiar surge of anger, the urge to lash out. Instead, I channeled that energy into making sure my revenge would hit harder than anything she'd expect. I started by planting the evidence. Not in a way that she'd instantly see, but enough to make her worry. I knew her habits, her routines, and I used that knowledge. One night, I left her a message on her phone, a screenshot of the photos I took, just enough to make her realize I knew everything, but not so much that she'd suspect me immediately. I made sure she'd find it at just the right moment when she'd least expect it. The next day, I sat her down, pretending I had no idea. "Hey, honey," I said casually, watching her carefully. You've been acting kind of strange lately. Anything you want to tell me?" Her face flickered, and she blinked away that nervous expression she always put on when she was trying to hide something. "I don't know what you're talking about," she replied, her voice even but a little too quick. I let her go on, watching her squirm. I pressed a little. "Are you sure? Because I found some messages on your phone, messages that don't match what you've told me." I kept my tone calm, but I could feel the heat bubbling in my chest. She looked down, avoiding my eyes. "Maybe I forgot to delete some stuff," she mumbled. I didn't say anything right away. I wanted her to stew, to feel the pressure mounting. I told her I needed to think, to process what I'd seen. That night, I planned to drop the real bomb. I kept her in the dark for a couple of days, watching her reactions, making her think I was clueless. Meanwhile, I was gathering all the remaining pieces, more messages, emails, even some receipts from her phone bill. I wanted to have everything laid out before I finally confronted her, making it clear I was onto her and not going to back down. One evening, I set up a small surprise in our apartment. I left the photos, the evidence I'd collected, in a folder on the coffee table. I didn't say a word, I just left it there and watched her enter the room. Her eyes scanned the folder, then widened as she saw the pictures, her face drained of color. "Oh my God," she whispered, voice trembling. This isn't real, you're lying." But I just looked at her, cold and steady. "No, Emily, I'm not lying, I knew everything. How long has this been going on?" She looked like she wanted to cry. Her hands shook as she tried to deny it, but all I saw was guilt, pure and simple. I pressed her further. "You were cheating on me with Jake, right? How long has this been happening?" Her voice broke. "It was just a mistake. It didn't mean anything." "That's bullshit," I shot back. "You think I don't see through that? You lied about everything, your work, your nights out, your calls. I was blind, but I'm not anymore." I could feel my fists clenching again, the rage bubbling under the surface. That's when I revealed my revenge plan. I told her I knew, I was done waiting, and now I'd give her what she deserved. It wasn't about jail or physical violence. It was about making her see the weight of her betrayal. I wanted to expose her publicly, ruin her reputation, make her regret ever crossing me. I explained how I'd already contacted a few people, mutual friends, her coworkers, people she trusted. I told her I'd send that folder of proof everywhere, let everyone know who she really was. Her eyes darted around, desperate, trying to find a way out. But I was resolute. Her mask was slipping, and I was going to take everything from her. The moment was perfect. I could see her trembling, her carefully crafted facade cracking. "You're serious?" she whispered. "You're really going to do this?" I nodded. "Yeah, and it's just the beginning. You should start preparing for the fallout." Her face crumpled and she broke down crying. I didn't care, that was her choice. I was just making sure I had the upper hand. I handed her back the phone with the evidence still visible on screen. "You've got a choice, you can come clean or I'll do it for you." She looked at me, eyes brimming with tears, but I had already made up my mind. This wasn't about her anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity. I was done being the victim. Now I was the one who'd set the rules. As I walked out of the apartment that night, I felt a strange sense of relief. I'd done everything I could to prepare for what was coming next. I knew once I pulled the trigger on my plan, there'd be no turning back. But at least I'd have my revenge. And she'd finally understand what it meant to betray someone who loved her. That trust was a fragile thing, and once broken, it's damn near impossible to fix. Would you like me to continue? The day I finally decided to execute my plan was one of the hardest I've ever faced. Not because I was unsure about what I was doing, but because I knew this was going to shatter everything between us. Still, the anger and humiliation I'd carried for days made it clear I couldn't just walk away and pretend I didn't see what she did. Not anymore. That morning, I woke up early, feeling the weight of what I was about to do settle deep in my stomach. My palms were sweaty, and my chest felt tight. I kept telling myself that this was for me, my dignity, my self-respect. The idea of her waking up to the truth, seeing everything laid bare, gave me that bitter satisfaction I'd been craving. I prepared everything meticulously. My phone was ready with all the evidence. I'd already sent the screenshots to a few mutual friends, warning them about her. I wanted her to get the message that her lies had come to light, that her betrayal was no longer hidden behind the facade of a perfect relationship. I also set up the conversation. I knew I couldn't do this over text or call. It had to be face-to-face, raw, real. So I told her to meet me at the park nearby, quiet, private, where I could get my message across without distractions. I wanted her to feel the weight of her actions in that moment, to see my face as I read her the truth. When she arrived, her eyes immediately flickered with suspicion. She looked nervous, her hands trembling slightly. I could see the sweat on her brow, the way her lips pressed into a thin line. She had no idea what I was about to say, but I knew she sensed it was bad. "Emily," I started, voice steady but cold, "we need to talk. I know everything about you and Jake." The words hit her like a punch. Her eyes widened and her breath hitched. She tried to speak, but I held up a hand. "Don't lie," I spat. "I saw you. I saw what you did. The pictures don't lie. You were in bed with him behind my back while I was outside, completely clueless." My voice cracked slightly, but I kept going. "You lied about everything, the late nights, the work trips, the dinners. All bullshit. You've been cheating on me for months." Her face crumpled. Tears welled up in her eyes and she looked like she wanted to sink into the ground. "It's not what it looks like," she whispered, voice trembling. "It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen. I was confused. I cut her off. "You're damn right you were confused. You betrayed everything we had. I trusted you, Emily. I thought I knew you." My voice cracked with rage, but I kept my calm. "And now I want you to see what your betrayal cost me." With that, I pulled out the folder, the one I'd prepared with all the evidence. I handed it to her slowly, watching her eyes dart across the photos, the messages, the receipts. Her face turned ghostly white as she realized I wasn't bluffing. She looked at me, her voice barely audible. "You're going to ruin me." "Ruin you?" I scoffed. "No, I'm just exposing you, making sure you understand what you've done. You're not innocent in this. You chose Jake over me. And now I want everyone to know the truth." Her shoulders shook as she fought back tears. "Please, don't do this. I'm sorry. I was weak. I messed up. Sorry," I snapped. "Sorry doesn't fix what you did. Sorry doesn't erase the fact that you broke my trust, my heart. Sorry won't undo the pain you caused." I took a deep breath, feeling my fists clenching again. "But I'll tell you what I am going to do. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are." Her voice broke into a whisper. "You're going to ruin me." "No," I said firmly. "I'm going to make sure you understand consequences. Starting with this." I handed her a sealed envelope with instructions on who to send the evidence to: friends, family, coworkers. I wanted her to see that once this gets out, there's no hiding from it. She looked at me with tear-streaked cheeks, voice trembling. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," I replied. "And I'm not stopping until everyone knows the real Emily. You can try to spin this all you want, but I'm finished being the one who gets hurt." My voice was cold, hard. "You chose Jake. You chose betrayal. Now you deal with the fallout." She stared at the evidence, then at me, her eyes brimming with tears. "Please don't do this. I love you. I made a mistake." "No," I interrupted, voice sharper. "You made a choice. And now I'll make sure everyone knows what that choice cost you. I'm done. I want my keys back. I want my life back, and I want you out of it." I reached into my pocket, pulling out a set of keys I had hidden earlier. I handed them over, a final act of severance. "Here, take those, pack your things and leave, or I will do it for you." She looked at me, defeated, breaking apart right there on that park bench. Her body shook as she tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. That was the moment I knew I'd done enough. I'd made my stand. I'd showed her what betrayal really costs. And as she slowly gathered her things, I felt that strange mix of relief and emptiness settle inside me. I had the evidence, I had the plan, and now I was finally free. But the real damage was done, and the fallout would be loud. The only thing left now was to watch her walk away and see how far her reputation would tumble. I took one last look, then turned my back and started walking away, knowing that I'd reclaimed my dignity, one hard step at a time. Would you like me to continue? The fallout was everything I expected, and worse. It was like watching a slow-motion train wreck unfold, except I was the one steering it all. I knew once I handed over the evidence there'd be no going back. But I also knew that losing her reputation was only part of what I wanted. This was about making her understand that betrayal comes with a price, and I was determined she'd pay it. The first thing I did was send the evidence to a handful of her closest friends, her coworkers, and her family. I crafted a message that was simple but brutal. "This is what Emily has been hiding. Pass this along if you want to know who she really is. I didn't add a single extra word. I wanted them to see the truth, the raw, ugly truth by themselves. The response was instant. Phone calls, messages, coffee break whispers. Everywhere I looked, I saw her world unraveling. I could hear snippets from across the street where I was hiding out, some friends angrily confronting her, others whispering behind her back. She tried to deny it at first, kept insisting it was all a mistake, but no one was buying it anymore. Her boss called her into a meeting that afternoon. I saw her come out of that office, face pale, eyes red-rimmed, shoulders slumped. The rumor mill was working overtime, and her reputation was crumbling faster than I imagined. I didn't want to gloat, but I had to admit, I felt a sick satisfaction watching everything fall apart for her. That evening I went to the bar where she used to go with her friends. I sat at a corner table, nursing my drink, watching her come in, looking lost, desperate. She kept glancing around, trying to find someone to save her. I caught her eye across the room, and she immediately looked away, her face flushing with shame. I didn't approach her. I just watched, letting her see I was still there, still watching. That's when I finally felt the weight lift a little. My plan was working. Her world was collapsing, and I wasn't even there to do it directly. That feeling, knowing I had taken control, was powerful. A few days later, I received a message from her. Short, trembling, "Please, can we talk?" I didn't respond right away, but I knew I'd have to face her at some point. Still, I wanted her to understand that I wasn't rushing to forgive or forget. This wasn't about reconciliation. It was about making her regret what she did. When we finally met in a quiet, empty parking lot, she looked shattered. Her eyes were red and her voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't mean for everything to come out like this. I was weak, I messed up, but I still love you." I looked her straight in the eyes and felt nothing but cold. "Love doesn't cheat," I said bluntly. "You chose Jake over me. You lied about everything, and now I want you gone, for good." I handed her the keys to her apartment. "Take your stuff and leave. I want no contact from you anymore." Her shoulders sagged and she nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand," she whispered. "I just hope you find someone who's better for you." That's when I finally felt the emptiness settle in my gut. It wasn't relief entirely. It was a strange mix of anger, sadness, and a deep, gnawing sense that I'd been robbed of years I'd never get back. But I also felt a strange clarity. I'd taken back control of my life, and that was what mattered most. After she left, I spent a few days in silence, just absorbing what had happened. The house felt colder, emptier without her, but I refused to feel guilty. I knew I'd done what I needed to do. I'd exposed her, taken my power back, and moved on. Looking back, I realized betrayal is a brutal thing, but it's also a catalyst. It forces you to reevaluate, to stand up stronger. I don't regret what I did. If anything, I wish I'd seen the signs sooner. But the most important thing I learned is this: never let anyone betray you and get away with it. Make them regret it. And if they don't, do it yourself. Now, I'm rebuilding my life. No more secrets, no more lies. Just the truth and a future I choose on my own terms. And that honestly feels better than I ever thought it could. Would you like me to finish with the final part? The days after she left were a strange blur, a mixture of relief and emptiness I wasn't quite prepared for. I kept moving forward, though. The house felt quieter, colder somehow, but I refused to let the silence drown me. That silence used to be filled with her voice, her laughter, her lies. Now it was just me, and I had to get used to that. I threw myself into rebuilding my life. I changed my routines, cut ties with her friends who knew and kept quiet, and started focusing on myself again. It wasn't easy. Every time I walked past the spot where her things used to be, I felt a sting. But I also felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. One of the hardest parts was not reaching out, not trying to call her or find out how she was doing. I knew that was just a pattern of pain I needed to break. I had to remind myself she chose her path, and I deserved better. I reminded myself that I'd done everything I could to salvage what was lost, but when someone betrays your trust so completely, there's nothing left to save. I took the evidence I'd collected, those photos, messages, receipts, and I made a conscious decision to move on without letting them consume me. I didn't want to be that guy who forever haunted his own pain. Instead, I focused on what I could control: my future, my happiness, my healing. One day, I found myself walking into a new cafe. I'd been staying away from places that reminded me of her, but I felt ready to start anew. I ordered a coffee, sat outside, and let my gaze drift over the busy street. Life was still happening, people laughing, kids running, the world turning without pause. And then I looked up and saw someone I wasn't expecting. It wasn't her, thank God. It was a woman who looked confident, genuine, someone who seemed to have no connection to my past pain. She smiled, and for a split second, I felt that flicker of hope again. Not because I was rushing into something new, but because I realized I was finally ready for whatever life threw at me. As I sat there, I reflected on everything: the betrayal, the pain, the revenge, and the eventual acceptance. I understood now that revenge isn't about destruction for its own sake. It's about reclaiming your dignity, your power, and your peace. It's about showing yourself that you're stronger than the hurt. I also learned that moving on doesn't mean forgetting. It's about accepting what happened, forgiving yourself for the pain, and choosing to let go of what no longer serves you. That's how you truly heal. Not by wallowing in revenge forever, but by building something better from the ashes. So here's my advice. If you're in a similar situation, remember this: never let betrayal define you. Stand tall, face the truth, and don't be afraid to walk away. Take your pain, your scars, and turn them into your strength. Because at the end of the day, your life is yours to live, on your terms, without lies, without betrayal. And that's what I intend to do.